Good evening, everybody. Once again, happy Tuesday. I hope everybody had an absolutely fantastic long weekend. I hope that you have as well. Had a really great start to the work week, and you are ready to embrace another enduring lesson. So I am going to try to pick up the pace today. I don't want to by any means discourage anybody, of course, from asking questions. I'm going to do my absolute best to be so thorough. I think I have a really good taste of what our group needs, but at the same token, I have a rather ambitious task for us tonight. We're going to be resuming on page 107. There's going to be a lot of content in the sense that just a lot of key buzzwords and explanation, if I may, for what they mean, and know that the end is near, time and or page 132. It's really important that I be able, or I hope, no pressure, pressure's on me really, but my bigger plan is it's important that I be able to tackle these two sections tonight, which allow me to tackle two sections on Thursday, which means we get to bring this unit to a close next Monday. So that's the large grandiose plan. So with no further ado, let's do this. I hope you guys all get a kick out of the pearls of wisdom that I have copied and pasted from the internet. Thank you, Google. It always seems impossible until it's done. And I like this because I feel like I have an impossible task today. So let's see where we are 75 minutes from now and counting. Okay, so a couple of just super quick announcements. We did hold our second tutorial today. For those of you that were able to join, I hope you got a kick out of it. For anybody who is not able, not to worry, the recording has been converted. All I need to do is push it to the Hive, which I will be doing this evening. So if you are waiting for the recording, it will be there tonight. So maybe you want to get your hands on it tomorrow, or depending on, if you are a late owl and you'll catch it this evening. I did also learn over the weekend, so I sent out an email today and I posted to social media alike, that HRCI, for those of you that are taking a PHR or SPHR exam or contemplating anything else, HRCI is now offering a $75 discount. So this is valid now through until October the 18th. I do not suggest you apply now. Okay, so you'll get your $75 off. I would push it until maybe, that date. If not, even maybe, well, no, you can't push it anymore. In any event, because you need the timing of the application to work out well, because remember, an application with HRCI is only valid for 120 days. So definitely you want to sit down with a calendar and see how this all works out for you. But in any event, $75 is $75. So know, again, that this is valid through until October the 18th. I did send out an email as well. You can find it on their website. I saw it posted on their homepage today. No, I don't know of anything for sure. I promise, if I do find out anything for either certifying institute, I will be sure to let everybody know. But this came directly from my partners at HRCI. Sherm, I don't know of anything. Sorry, but I promise I'll share. Alrighty, guys. So with no further ado, let's do this as we make our way towards the end of this book. Page 107, please. We're going to talk about global HR management. Whenever you see, there's really two words. When you see global or globalization or anything, to that respect, and as well, not really directly related, but indirectly related for sure, when you see strategic or strategy, which no doubt from all the lessons that we've had thus far, this is especially, certainly not limited to, but especially speaking volumes towards anybody that's taking a senior level exam. So whether it is SPHR or SHRM SCP alike. Now, I'm not disqualifying the professional level exams because anything is possible. However, global tends to be something that's a little bit more strategic, therefore, targeting a senior level practitioner. Now, not to contradict myself, but as well, I would alert SHRM exam goers, whether it is CP or SCP, global HR is one of the 3 differentiating topics on their exams. So SHRM, when they announced their exams were coming out 5 years ago, they said diversity and inclusion, technology, and global HR is most certainly going to be, topics on our exam, perhaps different from the HRCI exam. So anyhow, that's just a little bit of insight. Is that something that you will experience firsthand? Time will tell after your exam. In any event, there's a little insight. Okay, so what do we want to take care of in this section? If ever you're going to take the most thorough of notes, it's going to be this lesson. Either that or I'm scaring you unnecessarily, but I have always found this section is a little, a bit to take in. I want to talk about what it means to be a global body and really how that impacts human resources. We will as well take a look at different types of approaches to global HR, and then we'll talk as well about some cultural differences, things to be mindful of, especially when we're dealing with expatriate employees, relocation, and so forth. So we bring back actually environmental scanning. It's not going away. It somehow keeps on resurfacing. I just think this is now the third time we're bringing this up. When you're conducting any type of an organizational strategic analysis, that of course is including environmental scanning. You're doing internal and external, hence we have SWOT over on the left-hand side of the screen, but we're also going to do a pest analysis. What differentiates SWOT from pest, other than the bullets as you see already just before you, not to mention everything you know from lessons past, a SWOT analysis will take a look at both strengths and weaknesses externally, or excuse me, strengths and weaknesses internally, forgive me, while also considering opportunities and threats externally. So it's got internal and external kind of mixed in there. It's a smorgasbord. Pest is strictly external. Pest is an analysis that is most commonly conducted when a company is really considering a new endeavor or a new initiative, such as, for example, growing and maybe getting global reach. Just as an example. So no doubt about it, just wanted to bring back to your forefront of your mind these two different types of environmental analyses that would be conducted, because certainly going global is no exception. Now, there's three different stages of global HR management, as you see before you. And of course, this brings us all the way over, my gosh, we're already flipping a page to page 108. So first and foremost, we have import-export firms. Some companies may have already been created at this stage of globalization, and they stay here because that's just the nature of the company. Some companies will grow into a future stage. Some companies will actually shrink down to perhaps an earlier stage. So they're not necessarily indicative of one another, but nonetheless, sorry, let me go back with my first train of thought. Let's differentiate each of these. Import-export firms, kind of reminds me of George Costanza from Seinfeld, is where a company is moving products across borders. Employees are not usually sent abroad. And if they are, you're commonly sending a manager as an expatriate on a short-term assignment. Then we have multinational enterprises, or you might also know them as MNCs, multinational corporations. They're really one of the same. This is where there are going to be strategic operations, but in foreign locations. So you're going to have your headquarters in America, or whatever the home country is, but we're going to say it's in, the United States. And like I said, there's going to be strategic operations in foreign locations. Perhaps, for example, manufacturing might be in Asia. Sorry, that wasn't a snarky laugh. I just thought to myself, that's a common example I usually use, but now with what's going on in the news, maybe I should change up my example. In any event, expatriate managers will be relocated in an MNE situation, and HR policies too have to be adapted to that respective country. But then we have one step larger than an MNE, and this is a global firm. So you have headquarters of the organization. They are going to remain in the home country, but there's also going to be headquarters, not just strategic locations, but headquarters worldwide as well. And in each of these foreign locations, or each of these foreign headquarters, there's going to be specialized functions. So you're going to have perhaps HR in America, but it's not going to be a shared service model per se. There's going to be HR perhaps in Europe, and HR perhaps in Latin America or in Africa or wherever. HR has global policies in this case, and there's national departments respectively. So what you see here listed 1 through 3, it does actually start relatively small for global impact, but small version of big, and it gets larger. That's point number 2, and then larger, point number 3. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Let me know if anybody has any questions. I'm just going to keep pounding through this. But there's also some other structures. So in addition to the 3 stages that we just saw on the previous slide, which also you have on page 108 and spilling over to page 109, there's some organizations that might actually take these alternate approaches as well. So some companies are just born global. So they had the angel investors, they had all the stakeholders, shareholders, what have you, backing them up, because this was the vision which drove the mission, which of course enabled the strategic objectives from the company from the get-go. Perhaps we have some offshoring. So some organizations, they relocate some of their processes abroad to save money. I will give you an example. I offshore. So a lot of my design, so these slides, if I may, I need them to be a little bit more interactive for our e-learning course. I don't want them to be still because I've got to keep people who are doing this program self-paced a little bit more engaged, and it has to follow my narration. I don't do it live in real time. Well, truth is, sorry, I'm not trying to, please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make myself sound higher, better than, I guess the way it's going to come off. But for me to, first of all, get the training, which I don't have, is going to be costly. And then what I, as an American, North American, cost is a lot more than, truthfully, that talent that is already equipped with the KSAs if we offshore it, to be honest with you, in the Eastern Hemisphere. I cost more than people in another part of the world. So I actually have a team of designers who take all of my still designs and they use, if you guys are familiar, Articulate 360, what have you, to make it a little bit more interactive for our e-learning program. I offshore those services. There's a little inside scoop about how we do things here. And then last but not least, we have global outsourcing. So here you are outsourcing offshoring functions. So this is where an organization contracts out with another foreign company who they in turn may offshore. So in other words, get like subcontractors. Take for example, I'm sorry guys. Try again. Take for example, Nike. Nike in Asia. They are a global organization. They outsource who's actually going to manufacture the soles of their shoes, or maybe they outsource some other elements that come and bring the shoes together in Asia. But they're offshoring who's doing the laces. They're offshoring who's doing maybe the soles or who actually is stuffing up of the tongues. So there may be some global outsourcing. Different approaches. Well, here comes terminology that, oh, we have a comment coming in. Hold on. I was going to say, here comes terminology that's going to make you dizzy, but hold on, guys. Let me just read this out loud. So is this what global management question on the SHRM exam? Which of these actions is an illustration of unintentional organizational abuse? It might as well could be. I don't want to say yes or no for sure because I'm not going to pretend to be qualified at all, but it sounds complex enough that I don't understand it, that yeah, it could be. And then you're suggesting an answer to that question, offering a promotion to an employee whose family will be disrupted by this international assignment. Not necessarily. I think that there are some inferences in that, in my opinion. I haven't really, maybe it requires me reading it 2 or 3 more times, but the caliber of the question may very well be a very plausible question on any exam, whether it's SHRM or otherwise. But imagine too, especially for a SHRM exam, you're going to have questions that are accompanied by multiple choice possible answers. So I don't think it'll necessarily be, that cut and dry, but I think you're onto something for sure. Hope that helps. Yeah? Okay, good. Okay, so here's some words that I cannot pronounce, and I'll be honest with you, I really, worked hard to understand these at a higher level. So I hope that I do justice. When it comes to multinational enterprises, and likewise multinational corporations, remember those terms are interchangeably, the way in which these companies will actually be structured, if I may, and this is more from an operational place, but we as HR professionals need to understand the operations so that we can do our job. may be one of four approaches. I see a comment coming in. Hold on tight. I promise I'll take a look at that in just a moment. Now remember, a multinational enterprise has corporate units in foreign countries. So how do those corporate units, not necessarily corporate headquarters, but how do those units in different foreign countries operate? So first and foremost, there may be the ethnocentric approach. This is where you have the home country as the foundation of all the organizational values, the way in which the company socializes, and really generally its practices. We're going to most commonly find this in centralized companies. So imagine, for example, IBM. IBM is a multinational corporation. However, the way in which IBM operates is based on home. And I believe that's actually in White Plains, New York. So they are ethnocentric. We have another approach, polycentric. This is where the host country, so not the home, the host is dominating how the business operates. This is common in a decentralized company. Reason being, it's a smaller type of multinational enterprise, and that host country, for example, it might be, I don't know, United Arab Emirates. Well, they know their region best. So it's up to that host country, to function, to be able to cater to their immediate operational needs, both internally and external customers that they're serving as well. But again, we're talking about a little bit more of a decentralized company, so the flexibility is possible. Then we have a regio or regiocentric approach. The R-E-G-I-O of the word comes from region. Think of it like that. Because here you have regional subsidiaries of the businesses. They're grouped together. Now they're actually very, very unique. They're grouped together based on the polycentric approach. It's just done so based on regions. You can have multiple regions in one country. And this allows for greater integration between host countries. You can also have it, for example, you can bring all of Europe as a region, and then you have various different, countries, of course. But commonly across Europe, you'll find similar, be it operational values, because of, EU members, for example, and also just generally speaking, cultural values perhaps too. Me not being a world globetrotter by any means, so I'm making a lot of inferences here too. And then last but not least, we have the regio-centric approach. Not regio. I'm so sorry, guys. My brain's about to explode. I keep telling myself, go slow so you don't make so many mistakes. We have the geocentric approach. So think of geo coming from the word geography or geographic. Here you have business units. Based on the geographical location, those business units are operating completely autonomously. So imagine them as like their own little silos. So each geographic location, each little silo, if I may, they're seeking their own best practices. They're seeking their own efficiencies. And that's because they have different best practices, different efficiencies based on that geography. Okay, let me know how you guys are feeling. And in the meantime as well, let me take a look at some comments that came in while I was yapping your ear off. How will these appear on the test? Yes, how will these appear on the SHRM exam? So you guys are asking me. Let me try to think. I'm trying to go on memory, I'll be honest. The best example, regardless of, I think, the key terminology or the concept that we'll be studying at any point, the best example as to how you can expect these, be it definitions or illustrations I'm really trying to paint, they're best illustrated through your practice tests, I have to be honest. There's so many different ways that anything that we're studying could appear on a test. You can see straightforward knowledge and comprehensive based questions. So it could be as simple, and I don't use that word lightly because I don't think anything is simple with regards to these exams, but maybe I should use the word straightforward. It could be something as straightforward as, which of the following best defines? No, I don't think you're going to see that often. I personally, to my experience, was never so lucky. but they might be that straightforward and knowledge-based. In other situations, it might be the complete opposite, and it could be more of a 5-paragraph scenario-based question where perhaps it's asking you to, and please not verbatim here, but something to the effect of, if you are an HR manager who has just recently been part of a transition of an acquisition, and now you're working for a multinational enterprise, and one of the first, projects at hand that you're being assigned to is to formulate an organizational structure based on the ethnocentric approach, which of the following would be the first thing you should do? Now, I just made this up, don't get me wrong, but that is a smaller, high caliber kind of question you might maybe expect, but there's so many different things that I just mentioned. I mentioned about globalization, I mentioned about an acquisition, I mentioned about ethnocentric approach, I mentioned organizational structure. So I'll be honest, there could be a whole variety of different kinds of questions, and that's why I think the practice tests are best going to maybe settle your nerves, guys, about, oh my gosh, like how might I see, this content challenging my knowledge. You're more likely to see problem solving and scenario based. Let's see. If geocentric is autonomous for different satellites offices, wouldn't they use the same policies and procedures? If not, wouldn't there be too much differentiation? So you're likely working, or imagine an organization that is very much so successful based on its geography. So think, for example, off the top of my head, maybe about the oil industry. Of course, oil is different in Canada than it is in the US, which is completely different in the Middle East. So based on that geographical location, maybe the best practices may be similar, dwelling or things I can't even imagine, but approaches might be different. So not necessarily, and I think it also depends, first of all, on the approach to how that organization chooses, its globalization. And not to mention, I think that it's also going to be dictated by the industry. Yeah, for sure, my pleasure. I'm being asked, are the practice tests geared more towards PHR than SHRM? So I guess you mean by like more HRCI versus SHRM? Truth be told, we do know more about the HRCI exams. I'm just going to put this out there. However, SHRM exams are not new. We have all, that being all of us who teach and all of us who have designed the content as well as the practice tests, have experienced SHRM. I'll be absolutely transparent. The practice tests, while I do think that they're fantastic, and listen, they have to be, right? We're offering you guys a money-back guarantee, so you can only imagine how validated they are. It's definitely not a guarantee that, somebody just said, okay, let's cross fingers that, it works. Trust me. But truth be told, what those practice exams do lack is the, I would say, lengthier situational-based judgment questions that you'll see on the SHRM exam. Now, because our practice tests don't really capture what those 4 or 5 paragraph questions look and feel like, I have bought a couple of other resources to speak about, or so that maybe I could inject some more SHRM examples. And I have yet to this day, and I've spent a lot of money on buying some other resources, be it just, hey, SHRM practice tests and what have you. I have yet to find any literature that mimics what I experienced and what others too tell me they experienced. So I think that the practice tests are perfect balance in terms of the caliber, but that's the only thing that's missing. I thought the SHRM exam was a clone of HRCI. Yes and no. The content is, there's a complete overlap, but they do take a slightly different approach in that it's not as ambiguous, it's not as subjective, at least that's my personal take on it, and you will be faced with 40% situational-based judgment questions. Okay, good questions, guys. I hope I'm not scaring you. Okay, content-wise though, everybody okay? This is my biggest fear. Like, this is where I was warning you, and maybe you're thinking, wow, did I like worry you for nothing? But I thought that this was pretty like heavy with content. You guys okay? It's great? Oh, well then my bad. Okay, fine, good. Whew, good. This is one of the areas that I'm like, oh no. Okay, fantastic. So let's keep on going. So let's talk about international cultural differences. So I find it hard. So I think that in any respect, I have to be honest, And I have very, very limited, if you will, international reach. I've traveled everywhere in Toronto. But I think that no matter how near or far we go, we as just people always have an opportunity, I think, to embrace and get exposed to different cultures. No doubt about it. But the thing is that when you're in business, you definitely have to be even more so, I think, respectful and mindful and educated so that you can conduct really smart business. And that's what we're really going to talk about now. And certainly this is a consideration, especially from a human resources perspective, should we ever find ourselves in a position to either approve or assign a relocation. Because you want to be considering somebody who can handle, if you will, cultural differences and really, really embrace it and respect it as well. So to that respect, and I see a comment coming in, hold on tight, I promise I'll come to that in a moment. So first of all, there is power distance. Different cultures have different power, if you will, struggles, distances, proximities, what have you. This is basically differences in society. So different cultures, different societies, different laws of different lands, no matter what dictates those laws, they might have different shifts in power. Some are more political, some are more economic, some are perhaps a little bit more religious driven. But again, it's not a matter of who's right, who's wrong. It's just a matter of being, again, educated so that you know basically what kind of a conversation you're going into or what kind of a setting you're going into to have business conversations. There is as well uncertainty avoidance. This is a degree of tolerance for the unknown. Generally speaking, and again, this is me just reading, but generally speaking, all of us in North America, whatever part of North America, we don't have a very high tolerance of the unknown. We've got to know everything. That's why, we live by the polls, to see, how people are feeling left wing, right wing. We can't just wait for the vote to come in. And that's fine. That's, first of all, it gives us a lot of work and gives us a lot of insight. It keeps us very, very educated and informed. But there's other cultures that they have a higher tolerance because maybe they don't have a choice. Think of communist countries. They don't have a choice. Okay, well, another cultural difference may be individualism versus collectivism. This is how, in other words, we place our value in society. I'm going to paint us with a brush right now, and I certainly never do I ever, never have I ever, no, I never intend to insult anybody, so don't get me wrong, but I'm putting myself under the same coating of the same brush. Generally speaking, we all, at least North Americans, no doubt about it, other cultures and societies and regions in the world, I just know our land, we're selfish, at least according to the bullet that I'm trying to elaborate now. We are individualistic. Let me try, anyhow, please cooperate with me, the fates that be. Let me try to explain. If you, for example, find out tomorrow that you won the lottery, you define lottery. Lottery could just be getting a promotion, it's kind of like I won something, or literally could be lottery. Maybe you just cash in on a 37 mil. Would you stay where you are? So if you finally, let's say, got a job offer from another employer and they're going to make you, I don't know, director, this, that, or the other, something you've always aspired for. They're going to triple your salary. Or a different extreme, if you want $37 million in the lotto jackpot, would you stay where you would, or where you are? Okay, so I have here, I'm leaving. I'm with you. You're going to find me on a yacht beside Kylie Jenner. No, I can't afford that. Okay, we have one person saying, no, I would. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? You would go part-time? Okay, so it sounds like you still need to just that personal gratification. Another person says that they would stay. Wow, you guys are super. You're amazing. You only have 20 months left? Yeah, cash in on that. Okay. So if somebody, okay, maybe aside from the lottery, that was being way too animated. If I were to call you tomorrow, and you never know who's going to be on the phone, but if I call you tomorrow and I say, hey, listen, I'm going to triple your salary. I've got a job for you. I need you to help me do something on my team here. Would you make the move? I'm going to triple your salary. Would you make the move? Okay. I have quite a few exclamation marks. Depends on the role. Does it matter? Relacing shoes. Okay, no, fair enough. So anyhow, okay, so what? It is not too cold. And it's okay, we have healthcare. We keep you warm here. So that's what I guess I was trying to prove about what it means to be individualistic. Compared to some other cultures, and as I have read up, and I think actually it comes from the text, other cultures, like for example, I think in Asia, we're pretty selfish. We're looking after ourselves. Not in as selfish as a way, though, as I'm making it sound. But yes, we work and we seek work that makes us happy as people because it makes us feel complete and what have you. And we want to make an honest living. Again, whatever we need to pay the bills and then some, live our best lives. Many of you may feel the same way I do, but it keeps me up at night. I've got 3 faces with braces. I know it rhymes, but really. And I've got 3 kids to put through university, and God willing, 3 weddings to, pay my fair share, and God willing as well, grandchildren. I worry about this stuff. And that's over and above, the day-to-day, put food on the table. So yeah, it's got to be the right move, but I'm going to take care of myself. Now, it's not that I'm not committed to my company, and I think I can speak on your behalf as well. No doubt you love what you do. You love where you do it. The company's invested a lot into you, and you feel that sense of loyalty, and you want to return it. You'll never abuse it, and you're grateful. But we got to take care of ourselves. So that's some cultures. And maybe I'm not speaking, volumes to the how you feel or how you see things, and that's totally cool. So forgive me again if I painted everybody with a brush. But generally speaking, that's the culture in North America. And that's why we design the certain compensation packages that we do. But then other cultures actually are a little bit more collective. And again, I forget where I read it, but the Asian cultures, for example, are like that. They are committed. They have this sense of loyalty that it doesn't matter. You can offer them the moon, the stars, and everything under the sun, if that's a common expression. I just made it up. But their sense of belonging, you cannot put a price on that. In fact, you're shunned upon. There's no such thing. I'm going to continue with the remaining 3 bullets, and I know that I have, put aside some comments. So hold on tight, everybody. I promise I'll come to you. Then we also have some cultures that differentiate between masculinity and femininity. These are societal perceptions of what is deemed, air quotes, acceptable. There are certain occupations for certain genders, and there are certain genders that belong in certain occupations or even tasks or even functions, if you will, in life, and that's fine. But again, it's just a matter of know your audience and be assured not to offend anybody. And I actually say this because I do recall a couple of years ago, we were at a conference, and somebody that I was with, a little bit more of an affiliate business partner, we were we were about to sit down and meet with another potential affiliate business partner. So it was a really nice kind of forces of power coming together, I thought. The lady that I was with, as we would do in our North American culture, she extended her hand to shake hands with the gentleman we were meeting. Well, this gentleman comes from a culture, and she should have known, we should have known, as a region, you don't do that because men and women don't, pierce flesh. He was very, very offended, and he actually he didn't even sit at the table. He just walked away. So again, it's just a matter, once again, of knowing what culture you are, having dialogues with. Okay, and then we have long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. This is actually an index. So here we have a measure of a company's ability to cope with challenges. So on this index, there may be a low score, and that would be short-term and traditional coping mechanisms. And in other cases, it may be a high index score, long-term and open-minded. Again, North America, we tend to be long-term and open-minded. And then last but not least, we have indulgence versus restraint. That being, this is society's acceptance, if you will, of work-life balance. In other words, we indulge in work-life balance. Whereas there are some other cultures that are a little bit more adherent to that. They have restraint. They have certain social norms. Here I would like to say, again, in North America, if I can, just generalize, before technology, we were all about finding work-life balance. And I think that's also, we have alternate work arrangements. Well, I think of some other countries. I actually think of like where my descendants, like my family is from, and you actually work 5.5, arguably 6 days a week. There is no work-life balance. And the cost of living is just unbelievably high, but it's part of the culture. So again, just being mindful, because if you are going global, know that your business operations may change, but if you're also doing global business relations, you need to know, again, who your audience is. Okay, guys, bear with me. I have got to scroll up a fair amount to the first comment that how do I say it nicely, ignored? Not ignored, but had asked to be put on hold. Okay, one last question. Okay, we're going back about 10 minutes, guys, so forgive me. So at 8:25, which did you think exam was harder? Okay, I'm going to give you a quick answer, but there's so much explanation to that. I just don't want to chew off everybody's ear, but we can absolutely have a side conversation. I found HRCI harder. Not to say that SHRM wasn't hard in and of its own right. That is for sure. Okay. At 8:27, we had a potential client coming from another country. I researched the culture prior to them arriving to our office, so we greeted them properly. Amazing. Yeah, and I would say that is, if I may, again, I'm using my air quotes, textbook proper approach. And I certainly have learned my lesson to definitely, whenever I am meeting with international business associates, even if it is here, in America, like at our trade conferences, I like to do a little bit of research. So kudos to you for that, for sure. Lessons learned in life. Okay. Okay, and then just more recently I even wanted to ask you that question, if positions were available at HR.com, what companies would be, okay, so we do have positions, and I don't think that they are in North America right now. They are all, to be honest with you, in India and the Philippines, but different conversation for a different time, I think. For sure, anything's possible. What companies would be a collectivism? Companies that would be a collectivism, I'm trying to think. I can't think of any companies per se that are not global, but I'm just trying to think. I think like manufacturers, for example, in China, I think that they are a larger collective, definitely in Korea, but I don't have any precise examples. I just kind of, and I know this isn't going to do you any good, but I have like these images in my mind of, if you will, because again, so much trade comes, especially from China, and so much of our goods, clearly, I don't need to tell you that, right? It's all over the news, and I think it's just common knowledge, but there is that stronger commitment. Like they being like business in that part of the world, they don't really worry about turnover the way that we do, for example. They don't really worry about people walking away with organizational intellect the way that we do, definitely in our land. And the masculinity versus femininity, you have to be very careful. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Good. I say that a lot, don't I? Okay, so how do we manage global employment? So there is actually 3 different types of categories, if I may, of employees when we're talking about global employment. So first and foremost, we have expatriates. Expatriates are employees who are assigned to work for the home country, but in another country. So I'm just going to give you an example, and I'm sorry to always make this about like my real life or people in my life, but I've got control of the microphone, but no, just want to help you maybe make connections as well. My husband was given an opportunity to be an expatriate. So the home country was here, let's just say here for all respective purposes, just for now, we'll make that temporary. So it was in North America, arguably Canada, he's a Canadian employee. But about, I can't remember, 6-7 years ago, he was given an opportunity to relocate to Belgium. So in that case, he would have been an expatriate because there they have a host corporate office. Now, as it turns out, because I'm a pain in everybody's side, the relocation didn't take place. That's, again, different conversation for a different time. It's a different bedtime story. But fortunately, he had the opportunity, let's put a twist to this, to still do the job from here, just with a lot of travel. So he actually became a virtual expatriate. poor guy. But we racked up a lot of air miles, so who can complain? And I got a free trip to London. Next, we have a TCN. And again, whenever you see a terminology followed by an acronym, be prepared. On your exam, you could see it as either the full-blown, reference, or as well, maybe even the acronym. So just FYI to self. But here we have a third country national. These are employees who are citizens of neither the home nor the host country. So again, if I may, I'm going to use the example of my dear better half. He is actually a third country national. The home country is your country. It's the United States. At the time, he was working for Johnson Controls. We talked about that in our last lesson. Milwaukee-based. He's not a resident. He's not a citizen. He doesn't have a working visa. I'd love to pay your taxes instead. No. He's on Canadian payroll. He's a Canadian citizen. He's not a citizen of the U.S., but yet the relocation was to Belgium. Not a citizen there either. The third country in this case is Canada. And then last but not least, local national. This is also known as a host country national. So these are employees, workers, who are hired by a multinational corporation, let's say based out of Milwaukee, but yet they have international locations, let's say in Belgium, and those people are citizens of Belgium working at the Belgium location. They are locals, for that region. Comment is coming in. Were you okay if your husband had to move? Yes, but it would not be an easy bunch of gummy bears to swallow. So a third country national, I'm just being asked to repeat it, is these are workers who are hired by a multinational company to work, but in that worker's home country. So for example, let's just use Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls is based out of the U.S. Corporate head office, home country is the U.S. They have operations in Belgium. The employees who work for the Belgium operations in Belgium as citizens of Belgium would be the local national. So think of it as they are local to where the operation is, but their employer is national or multinational. Let me know if anybody needs anything repeated. You got it? Okay, fantastic. So how do we choose expatriates? Now, no doubt about it, expatriates are going to surface again, whether it's talking about training, whether it's talking about a little bit more thorough recruitment, whether it's talking about compensation. But high level, how do we choose this? Because it is not an easy task. The goal ultimately here is to select people who will stay the entire duration of the assignment. It could be short-term, it could be long-term. In the case that we have been faced, it's been indefinite. You want people who as well are strategic and are tactical. There's certain criteria often that are used in selecting expatriates. No doubt for their professionalism, no doubt for their experience, two, their technical skills. So just take, for example, having the job knowledge, the leadership skills, the perceptiveness, having the willingness, first of all, to move, knowledge of the company, having a strong reputation, the ability to work amongst different cultures and with foreign workers. Really need to have somebody who is, well, to this picture, really stacked up and equipped. But no doubt about it, it is a big undertaking, and it could affect more than just the obvious. The obvious being the individual who's being selected, and two, the organization who's, well, I guess, doing the moving and the selecting. And some of you may have been through this and may have had a similar or maybe a different experience than what I have kind of touched on. But this is really near and dear to my heart because it was a very, very, I would say, difficult decision when my family went through this. But families also have to be considered. So if there's any dependents, if there's any people traveling with that expatriate, not only from a cost perspective, but I'm going to say from an emotional perspective as well. It's hard. And if you don't have the support of those who are really, going with you, if everybody's not on board, that expatriate, that employee, that worker, they're not going to be successful. No doubt about it. So a lot of factors need to be considered. For example, the spouse's career. Some people cannot get a working visa, and then they are sitting idle. I have a girlfriend who relocated to Manhattan. Her husband works for Labatt, She is a teacher here. She did not get a working visa. She's not been able to do anything. She's been there for a year. She's happy, but she told me, there's only so many yoga classes I can go and do. She's kind of crawling out of her own skin. And then there's also, for example, as well, the finances associated with that career. I know that was certainly a consideration when I was in that case. And sometimes the companies are willing to comp it. Not too shabby. What about family living accommodations? The children's education, if there are kids. Health and dental care. You take someone like me out of my country, I'm not used to really paying for this out of pocket. There's definitely got to be a consideration for that. Let's see, what is your take and or the HR stance on companies, quote unquote, targeting single employees for expatriate assignments? Are there legal concerns with that? I think my first impression, here's the first thought that I have. If someone genuinely is qualified for the opportunity, and it, I guess, would have to be proven or trusted that no consideration, if I may, of their, I guess, like family situation or lifestyle, so whether or not they do have dependents traveling with them or not, that should be absolutely like irrespective. You know, the company, and maybe I'm just living in la la land, but sure, the company is going to have to cost it out. But I would think that the first priority would be finding the most qualified candidate to get the job done. And then sure, it might be a consideration, holy wow, that person, you know, has 7 people going with them. That's going to cost us a pretty penny. Or no, this individual is, you know, going on their own, and then we're not going to, you know, absorb, you know, any additional costs, such as spouse's career, children's education, or what have you. I don't think it would be right to target somebody, because then you could be disqualifying, thereby discriminating against somebody who is a perfect candidate. Hope that that kind of answers your thought. How much screening would be involved in selecting an expatriate? You know what? It really varies. I'll be honest with you. Some organizations screen just as much as they were hiring an external hire. Some organizations have already groomed somebody for this, and it was part of the individual's career pathing and succession plan. So that's kind of, I think, situational, at least to my experience. Yeah, I agree. It would be very unethical to target somebody and totally discriminatory. I know I certainly wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity because I got, you know, 3 people with braces on their face. Based on experience, absolutely. And it's not just experience with an organization. I think it's experience as well in doing the task, experience in being able basically to come in and accomplish, and experience as well perhaps working with foreign workers. Let's see, we had an employee move to France, and I just finished learning their required health benefits and was able to get them their benefits in France. It was very time consuming and confusing. Yeah, that does not sound like an easy task. But I guess it's all part of like learning curves and just makes you stronger for the next opportunity. Relocation was never one of my personal like loves, I have to admit. Okay, let's bring this section to a close because I got some really fun stuff up next in our next section. So here's some things to be mindful of. Discrimination, human rights, or civil rights. And it's interesting. Our lands are not too far, but what you guys call civil rights, we here in my land call human rights. But in going global, have to understand what is defined as, you know, discriminatory, be it actions or decisions or practices. No 2 places are necessarily the same, or maybe they are, but you just can't assume that. Child labor, totally different child labor laws. What about immigration? The requirements for employment, so like such as visas, for example. Compensation, labor laws differ. So for example, even so much as how do we define exempt, non-exempt? EU, everybody is unionized. Totally protected. What about that's to the next point, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. But talking about compensation, the way in which overtime is calculated. Up until, oh gosh, maybe 20 or so years ago, but here in Canada, we calculated overtime on the day, not the week. The good old days when we had money. Speaking about organized labor, like I said, unions, EU, for example. What about dismissals and reduction in forces? That may be managed differently in different global environments. Health and safety, policies, legislation, regulations, completely different in different regions. So all these wonderful things to keep in mind. Let's wrap up this section in typical wrap-up fashion. Which kind of firm is most extensively involved in international business? Would it be a multinational enterprise? Would it be a global firm? Import-export firms or firms that have international partners? Which kind of firm? Now, for what it's worth, we only spoke about 3, so I hope you have an easy time eliminating at least one of these, because one just doesn't even belong there. Okay, so I definitely need to change the caliber of these questions. Okay. Looks like we have a little bit of a slower response rate coming in, and that is kind of gone to a lull. Oh, nope, just in time. Perfect timing there. Okay, I'm going to announce the answer because I'm so excited to go into the next section. So going once, and to going twice, and to going 3 times. Funnily enough, the one that sounds very interesting is the one that doesn't belong there. B is the correct answer. The reason why D doesn't belong there, or it's not correct, is just because you have international partners doesn't mean that you have the, I would say, most intense, saturated level of international business. I've got one international partner. I am by no means an international, operation. So B is the correct answer. I think everybody weighed in with B. So bravo, you have completed another section. Yay, we're getting closer to the end of Unit 1. Over on page 123, you see that you have, wowzers, 6 questions to test your knowledge. So for fun, there's your homework. Okay, let's talk about leadership and management. Let me ask you guys a quick question. True or false? All leaders are managers, all managers are leaders. True or false? All leaders are managers and all managers are leaders. Yeah. Isn't that unfortunate? Everybody is weighing in saying, yeah, not so much. That's a hard no. And isn't that unfortunate? So let's talk about this. Let's look at this. In going into this section, my challenge to you is, close your eyes, please. Don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep. Just close your eyes. And I want you to think about somebody in your life, personally or professionally, that you would put in the manager column and somebody you would put in the leader column. For some of you, it might be the same one person. For others, it may be 2 separate people. But I just want you to capture somebody, once again, in your life, so that this way you think about that person or these people as we go through the next couple of pages. So speaking of which, now that you have that person or these people in mind, we're going to describe and illustrate 3 different leadership theories. As well, we're going to take a look at actually the continuum of leadership that has been presented to us by 2 scholars, Tenenbaum and Schmidt. And then we'll talk about leadership training. Oh, that's so nice. You need to go and tell her that. Man, why does my husband ever say that about me? Okay. So here are 3 different leadership theories. Now, this visual that you have before you, you're not going to find in your text. I mean, you will, but it's all like in words. And I'll be honest, I struggled for longer than I'm willing to admit. How can I capture everything basically on page 125 and page 126 in the most visually aesthetic and also, I would say, like impactful way to help people recall? So I created this. First and foremost, we have, as you see at the top of page 125, the traits theory. Some may argue, whether you agree or not, but the school of thought is some people just have leadership traits. Some people believe, look, some people are just born with it. They got like the swagger, and that's fine. And some people think, no, we can acquire it through life. We need good coaches and training and confidence, and that's totally, I think, applicable too. But the leadership theory for traits, so the traits theory says leadership is exuded, if I may, through physical, intellectual, or personality traits. That's where you see it. Then there is the behaviors theory, and it is believed that leadership is demonstrated through one of three behaviors. So some leaders are just authoritarian. Some adopt the behavior of being more democratic. And some are passive and they are laissez-faire. But then it begs the question, are you stuck to those behaviors? Are you pigeonholed to those traits? Sometimes we change our approach based on like what's going on. And so we have, to the far right, the situational or the contingency leadership theory. And this I'm going to spend a little bit more time in. Basically, any one of these four, which I'm going to go through in detail right now, basically say, hey, listen, a true leader is going to change their approach based on really the situation they're in, because frankly, the approach is contingent on, and fill in the blank. So the first school of thought, which is presented to us by Hersey and Blanchard, and no, I wouldn't stress to remember these names, but I want to say them out loud because, yeah, they're in the textbook, so I just don't want to drop the ball. But Hersey and Blanchard say, you know what? The leader is going to take an approach depending on the maturity of their followers. So we're going to call followers for all respective purposes as employees, if I may. It really depends on the on the worker's ability to perform their activities and their willingness as well to accomplish their task. Now, when a worker's maturity increases, the leadership style is going to change. It goes from telling to selling, participating to delegating. It all depends really on who are you managing, in other words. I like to think of it like this. And maybe just because today is the first day of school, at least in my land, so I'm all about, back to school. But I think about my friends who are teachers. One particular friend who, I don't know how she does what she does, she's a kindergarten teacher. And I imagine what it must be like. And I blended together, with the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Kindergarten Cop. But think about that movie, if you saw it. Think about the scene. Let me paint the picture. When the teacher, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Kimball, he was trying to manage the room. And the kids wouldn't have it. They weren't listening to him. They were running around. They're pulling their toys. Let's say that those kids were not mature. They did not follow the direction. They did not do as they were asked. So in this case, the teacher had to be more of a disciplinarian based on that situation. But imagine the complete opposite, where let's say when the teacher says, okay, everybody, put away your toys, come on to the carpet, cross your legs, fold your hands in your lap, and now it's story time. And imagine all the children do is exactly as they're asked. Well, given that situation, the teacher in this case isn't so much of a disciplinarian, because the kids are mature, they're listening, they're attentive, they're following directions. Now the teacher gets to be an educator. That's what maturity really is speaking to, but except just amplify that to like adult version. Then we have the contingency theory within this umbrella. This is brought to us by Fred Fiedler. I can't pronounce it for the life of me. I can spell it though. And here he created an index. He basically said a leader's reaction towards a task is contingent on this measure called the LPC. Kind of sounds pretty awful. Least preferred coworker. It's not as bad as it sounds, just really not the ideal kind of acronym. But this least preferred coworker scale, this measure on an index, it depends on the leadership style. And the leadership style depends on how it's scaled. So really the scaling is determined by one of two things. Multiple things, my bad. It's the relationship between the leader and the subordinate. Some people have a good chemistry, some people are like oil and water. The scale also is going to depend on the level of the task structure. You have a loosely structured task, or do you have a very tight structured task? And then last but not least, it's also on the strengths of the leader's power position. In different circumstances, hence it is contingent, some leaders can really, if you will, step up and shine, while others maybe don't have that confidence and they're maybe struggling themselves. So there's so many different variables, hence it's called contingent. Then we have the path goal model. The path goal model is based on the expectancy theory. Now we're going to talk about the expectancy theory in Unit 4, but it basically says you will get out what you put in. Now the path goal model, try that again, Jen. The path goal model is all about attracting followers. Attract those followers, get on board, and let's achieve the goal. There's 4 different styles of leadership. There is directive, there is supportive, there is achievement-oriented, and there is participative. But any one of those is going to be, once again, dependent on the goal, the followers, the path to achieve the goal. Now, the leadership style is going to depend on the characteristics of the followers and the characteristics of the environment. I don't know about you, it's a lot to take in. Let me paint a picture. Does anybody recall, I'm guessing from childhood, having seen the movie The Wizard of Oz? And I mean like the original with Judy Garland. Perfect. Okay, try to recall that movie. Here you had Dorothy. She had a goal to get to the wizard. She wanted to go home. Wizard equals go home. There was a path to get to the wizard, right? Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. No refunds because of the singing, sorry. Singing is free. And along her journey on the path, she met followers. I can't remember the order, but I think there was a Tin Man, there was a Scarecrow, there was the Lion, and each had their own strengths and each had their own weaknesses. And in different circumstances, whether it was the flying monkeys, whether it was falling asleep in the meadow, strengths and weaknesses actually, surfaced to help them, again, continue down the path. That's the path goal model. And last but not least, we have the decision-making model brought to us by Vroom and Yetten, where they said the leadership style depends on the decision that's being made. I want to ask you a question. When you decided to take this exam and you decided, okay, I think I'm going to enroll in some sort of preparations, did you decide that on your own? Did you discuss this with anybody? Or was it a group decision because you're doing it with people? No, it's not. That's a training thing. So, you did, okay, so we have one classmate saying, I decided this on my own. Autocratic. Good. Discussed it with your supervisor. Consultative. Good. A couple other people are saying, I did this all on my own. Discussed it with your wife. I'm really starting to envy this lady. I got to say. Okay. But I want you to consider another decision you have made when maybe you didn't make the decision completely on your own, or you didn't consult it with, let's say, a supervisor or let's say a friend. The way in which perhaps you decide things may depend on what is being decided, how equipped do you feel to make that decision, and what is the nature, frankly, of maybe my environment. Meaning, no doubt about it, you can make every single decision on your own, but are you sending a message to everybody saying you're not a team player kind of thing? So I'll just give you one of my crazy, wacky personal examples. When it came time to take a family vacation, we consulted as a family. I don't know why, the kids didn't pay for it, but we still want them to be happy. So it was a group decision. So that was one of 3 different leadership styles under this theory. When we were getting into a new lease 2 years ago, we consulted with the kids because I wanted a car where you had to fold the seats forward to get to the third row. And my husband was like, no, it's not a good idea. So I asked the people who this would impact. So we consulted with them. Their voice did not weigh anything because, like they don't pay the bills, but I did consult with the people that this would impact. And then a couple of years ago when I decided to paint my dining room black, yes, I painted my dining room black. I didn't ask anybody. I knew what I was doing. I did it on my own. A couple of wild examples. Let's see. Comments are coming in. First one of the consultant manager. Okay, yeah. What policies and procedures decide what your decision would be? Well, sometimes policies and procedures are the decision, to be honest with you. So take, for example, an open door policy. You don't need to consult with people as to how you're going to help an employee who maybe is coming to you with, I don't know, any type of a grievance. When it comes to disciplinary decisions, maybe it is a little bit more contingent, or maybe it is a little bit more flexible to variables. I don't know that policies and procedures, can necessarily guide every single decision, but I think that they are in place to uphold, and this is what we learned in the very first lesson, that general consistency. And again, that's that corporate governance. So it really depends, I would say. Disciplinary decisions probably are going to be a little bit more autocratic. I would say perhaps in discretion to, let's say, time off or paid time off or personal leave, they're going to be a little bit more flexible. Yeah. Great, good. Okay, so let's take a look at two different types of leaders. We have transformative leaders and we have transactional leaders. Here are some words. To lead is to inspire. To lead is to influence. To lead is to motivate. Now, either one of these two different types of leadership approaches, I do believe, could probably deliver those same kind of like emotional connections to, these inspiring words, but the approach is different. So try to find, this is what helps me personally, some symmetry in the words that are being used here in these key buzzwords. I see here the word transform, that being in the word transformative. Here you're trying to transform somebody, perhaps in their current state, to be a little bit more empowered, to be more knowledgeable, to be more educated, to ideally lead themselves. So transformative leaders are working on developing future leaders. They're going to get to the end result following the same strategic goals, objective, policies, procedures, you name it, as any other leader, but they're going to do this in a way that is really embracing learning opportunities. They want to be a coach. They want to be a mentor. They never want to give somebody the answer to 1 + 1 being 2. They want to say, okay, let's think about this. If you have one apple and one apple, how many do you have and why? So they like to put forward some more thought-provoking questions so that somebody can go, ding, 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 I got it on my own. Because there is a larger, if you will, like principle or learning to be had where you're going to equip somebody to problem solve on their own in the future. Whereas you have transactional leaders. Transactional leaders, take a look at the word transaction. Think of a transaction. You and I at the grocery store, we're just another transaction. Think of a restaurant, better yet. They want to just turn over tables, right? They want to get our transaction, the order, the food served, the food fed, the table cleaned up as quickly as possible. On to the next. So a transactional leader, they TCOB. They just like to take care of business. They will, again, get to the same results as a transformative leader. They follow the same P&P. They follow the same values, vision, mission, everything. But they might be able to get to it a little bit more expeditiously because they're not going to help guide one to understand why 1 + 1 is 2. They're going to say, it's 2, move on. They're going to give somebody all of their answers. They do tend to also create some more dogmatic kinds of behaviors. But that being said, in order to get the job done, to take care of the business, move on to the next, what really differentiates a transactional leader from a transformative one is they will rely on rewards. I don't want to say bribes, but incentives. And they will apply disciplinary consequences where needed. Okay, question is coming in. I'm being asked to repeat it. To lead is to inspire. To lead is to influence. To lead is to motivate. Let's take a look at the continuum of leadership. And this is one of our bullets in our agenda. This is presented to us by Tenenbaum and Schmidt. So here you have this on page 128. What you see here, it's really, really interesting. And it might take, reading through this once, twice, 3 times to really grasp this. What I really love is over on the left, and remember that spectrum. We're over on the left, it's centralized. Over on the right, typically, it's a little bit more decentralized. But you see this gray area is where it's very it's more delegatory. Okay, so it's very managerial, dictated, authority heavy, but then it starts to get narrow. But likewise, as it gets more narrow in the gray, it gets wider in the white. And that's where we see more freedom. That's where we see more participative, more, if I may, transformative kind of leader approaches. So this model is actually in place to describe 7 different leadership styles in this centralized to decentralized kind of continuum. And we see the 7 different leadership styles right here at the bottom. So in your typical tall and narrow centralized company, we're going to see the authority, top heavy, they make a decision, they announce it, you don't like it, too bad, so sad. That's it. There's no room for massaging. Next, we see the whole selling of a decision. Decisions still be made. Authority is still in place. Explanations will be provided. But again, this is just the way it's going to be. We make our way a little bit more to the right. Ideas are going to be presented. Logic behind, or the meaning behind the madness will be presented, and questions will be invited, so that maybe questions might help one say, that is a really good point. Maybe I didn't consider it from this angle. I'm open to suggestion. In the middle of the road, we see that a tentative decision is actually going to be announced, meaning it's tentative on, and then maybe those conditions are going to be listed. Maybe things are subject to change. Maybe not right away, maybe in the future. We're just showing that it is basically an even, if I may, power distribution, because it's in the middle of this scale. Tipping a little bit closer towards the right now, this is where we're going to see less, if I may, like managerial heavy, more input from all members of the organization coming in. Leaders are going to say, okay, we got ourselves a problem. What do you think? If you had to choose between one of these 3 approaches, what would you do? And I want to hear why. Second to last, certain limits may be defined, but still the group is being asked to weigh in so that collectively as a group decisions can be made. And last but not least, all members of the organization, regardless of where they rest on the org chart of the organization, they're being asked to weigh in as an equal member. Every voice matters. So you can see a complete paradigm shift from left to right. But again, you can take a little bit more of a leadership, lesser of a managerial authoritative position in a smaller setting. Guys, we're going to achieve our goal today. Isn't that like a first? So here we have EI, emotional intelligence. And I love this. I actually studied this as how EI appears in humans, particularly like in children. It just blows my mind. But nonetheless, we're here taking a look at our ability to use our emotions to drive our intelligence, our decisions, to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to be personable. And we, as human resource professionals especially, are really all concerned about this, because this is really what we do. This is what we're all about. So I think, in all fairness, that this table, as you see before you, which you also have, of course, in your text, it speaks volumes for itself. And you see where there's high levels, what it helps in, and not having high levels of, emotional intelligence. It could actually, be what's the word I'm looking for? A deterrent as well. So I'm going to leave this in your trusty lap. If I were to just truthfully regurgitate the book, I think I'd be robbing you of the opportunity to have that like gut-wrenching, heart, emotional ingestion of all of this and be able to relate to it like I did. So if you haven't yet kind of sunk your teeth into this, I highly, highly encourage that you do. It's good. And even there's a lot of great research online. I'm going to try to tag some of this to my lesson recap for you. Lots of great stuff. I'm very, very, passionate about this. Let's see, wouldn't subordinate-centered leadership be more effective? It really depends on the setting. So in a smaller setting, absolutely. But in a larger setting, it might not actually be possible because you have so many subordinates. I'm being asked, something is wrong with my screen. What you should be able to see is emotional intelligence. Actually, I'm just about to flip over now, and this is our last slide of the night. Leadership training. How can we increase leadership effectiveness? Here's the thing. There's more to leadership training than I think meets the eye. So let's take a look at these as we wrap up. Yes, there is a leadership training, soft skills. Absolutely, whether it's communication, time management, problem resolution, so forth. But it's also a matter of managerial selection and placement. So where leadership styles actually match to a situation, and we actually rely on that LPC score. We might also engineer the organization. We need to make the job fit the manager. And then as well, there is rewarding leader behavior. And we can do this through reinforcement. We do this through ongoing recognition. It's not limited only to a leader, make no mistake, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at a comment that just came in as we wrap up with this knowledge check question. Which of the following is characteristic of a transactional leader? Which is characteristic of a transactional leader? And I'm so sorry that it looks like we have a classmate that is having some horrible, I guess, images on their screen. I can't even imagine why that might be. Maybe it's a matter of refreshing. I'm not sure it's worth your while now because we're done. Okay, fantastic. Okay, super. And no, oh my gosh, I jinxed myself. You said that the screen is frozen, now my mouse is frozen. No. Okay, you guys nailed it. I've got to come up with harder questions for you. I don't know how you're doing this. You're really throwing me off course. Contingent pay. A transactional leader most definitely will have a lot in common with a transformational or transformative leader, but this is what sets them apart. But like I said, you nailed it, so amazing. Okay, guys, this wraps us up. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And can you imagine we accomplished our goal? Whoever would have thought? Okay, so when we meet on Thursday, we are going to resume on page 133. I want to do another 2 sections. This is going to take us to page 156, which allows us a whole lesson for the last section, as well as a flashcard review quiz. So I'll tell you more about it in our next lesson. So the reading assignment is 133 to 156. I will take a look at your email of the funny screen. We're going to call it just a funny screen for now. Again, I can't imagine what it is. It might be your bandwidth. It might be your internet connection, because I think it might just be an individual experience, but I'll take a look and I'll see if I can make heads or tails of it. Forgive me for having such a short, or I guess a hard stop with you guys. It is horrible lightning in my neck of the woods, and I got 3 babies. My kids are at the movies and I need to go pick them up. So if it were good weather, I'd say they can wait, but forgive me, guys. I'm going to exit now, but if there's anything that you need that I'm cutting you off from, please feel welcome to reach out to me. Otherwise, I shall see you Thursday. Thanks, everybody.